Perek Chof Ches, Posuk Yutes. Speaking about the korbanos that were on Pesach, the Torah tells us, Posuk Yutes, V'kraftem isha ola Hashem porim b'nei vokar shnayim. You bring a burnt offering to God, porim b'nei vokar, oxen, 2 oxen, ayal echod, 1 ram, v'shiva kvosim, and 7 sheep, b'nei shano tamimin, unblemished yulachem. That's what you should bring. This is what we call the communal offering, that it's brought on Pesach. So Rashi says in Yutes, take a look in Yutes, what's porim? What do we bring porim? Oxen or bulls? Keneged Avrom. Porim corresponds to Avrom Avinu, Shenemar, Keneged Avrom, Shenemar, Velabokor Rotz Avrom. Avrom, when the 3 angels had come, this was the 3rd day of his circumcision, and he had believed they were just wayfarers. It says he ran to the cattle, to the oxen. So Porim corresponds to Avrom. Elim, the rams, Keneged Elo Shel Yitzchok. That corresponds to the ayil that was brought in the place of Yitzchok at the time of the Akedah. Kvosim, sheep, Keneged Yaakov. That corresponds to Yaakov. Where do we find sheep in regard to Yaakov? Shenemar, Va'kvosim Hifrid Yaakov. Yaakov separated the sheep. B'Yisod Shel Moshe Darshan. He says he saw this midrash brought by Moshe Darshan, that each one of these species correspond to each one of the patriarchs. So when I was reading that Porim correspond to Avrom Avinu, now this was the moment that the angels were coming to inform Avrom Avinu that he was going to have a child. One angel came to inform Sarah she was going to have a son. One angel came to heal Avrom. And the 3rd angel who was there came to destroy Sodom. That was the 3rd angel. But 2 of the 3 who had come, one was to heal Avrom, one was to inform Avrom Avinu that he was going to have a son. And the healing, which healing did he have to be healed? He had to be healed from the bris milah, the bris. We had mentioned, this is a whole, you have to see the way we're going to connect the dots now. We had mentioned that Avram was childless. At the age of 99, Hashem says to Avram, the land of Canaan will be yours, and he gives him endless blessings, brachos. So Avram says to Hashem, what's it all worth? I have no son. The administrator of my household, Eliezer, will be my heir. So Hashem says no. The one who will be the issue of your loins, he will be your heir. And then he says, Hashem says to Avram, look at the heavens and you will see, as you cannot count the stars in the heaven, so similarly your children will not be able to be counted. That's what it says in the Torah. Now, before Avram was able to father Yitzchak, what had to happen? Firstly, he had to be circumcised. And when he was circumcised, Hashem says to him, your name will no longer be Avram, it will be Avrohom. The hay was added to his name. And Chazal tell us, Hashem says to Avram was an expert astrologer. He says, although it says in the stars, Avram ein lo ben, Avram will not have a child, Avrohom will have a child. This is what Hashem says to Avram. So the question is, why was the letter He added to his name? That's the question. So Rashi brings the Chazal that until he was circumcised, Avram did not have full control over his body. In terms of within the spiritual realm, what did he not have control of? Which parts of his body? His eyes, his ears, and his male organ. So when he had the circumcision and the foreskin was removed, he became Avrohom. What's Avrohom? Avrohom corresponds numerically is Ramach. It's 248. What I'm quoting now is all Chazal. It's all Medrashim. It's Ramach. So he had the Hey added to his name. When the circumcision took place, he's fully complete. He has full control of every aspect of his being. Okay? Now, why was Klal Yisrael given the Torah and the nations of the world were not given the Torah? It wasn't even a consideration. I mean, God offered the Torah to the nations of the world, as the Gemara tells us in Avodah Zorah, because if he wouldn't have, they would have said, why don't you offer it to us? So Hashem offered it to them, and they rejected it. Then he offered it to Klal Yisrael. But factually, it was never a consideration that they even had any relevance to the Torah. Why didn't they have relevance to the Torah? So the Maral of Prague explains that due to the Chet of Odom Arishon, where Odom had introduced what's considered unadulterated evil into existence by eating, ingesting of the Eitz Hadas, which was Tov Hara, as a result of that, his level of Bechira, his level of control, that he was in the position to make choices at the most delicate level, didn't have that choice. Because he had such a intense level of conflict of interest, because that evil was so intermingled to every aspect of his being, decisions are limited to Shev Mitzvah Bnei Noach, to the 7 Noahide laws. The 248, the subcategories, and the nuances that initially the original intention of creation was, Adam no longer was qualified. Therefore, Adam has no relevance to Mitzvah Saseh. He has no relevance to, there are no positive commandments regarding a non-Jew. Only negative, and the negative is limited to the 7. Jews, Klal Yisrael, have 365 negative commandments. We have 248 positive commandments. This is only due to Avrohom Avinu, that because Avrohom Avinu, until that point, had met many challenges, and he espoused monotheism, and he introduced Hashem to existence, therefore he was able to affect the evil that was within him, that he was worthy of circumcision. What does that mean, worthy of circumcision? The Gemara tells us in the Dorim that if a non-Jew circumcises himself, all it is a cosmetic procedure. He's still called an Orel. Orel means an uncircumcised person. Although physically he's circumcised, because, and the Mishnah cites a pasuk, a verse, because non-Jews are called Arli Lev. They have a foreskin on their hearts. So, meaning the essence of the person is his soul. The soul itself has limitation. That's a non-Jew. A Jew, due to Avram's initiatives that he had taken, when he introducing Hashem to mankind and bringing God from heaven to earth, that God became a known entity, he merited a level that if he removes the foreskin, as we mentioned, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh cites a Zohar, that when Adam was created initially, there was no impurity in his being. The foreskin didn't exist. The foreskin itself is an expression of the evil which Adam ingested. The Jew was given the mitzvah of milah, of circumcision, that when we remove that foreskin, we separate ourselves from that representation of evil, and therefore we rise to a level that we're able to have choices which we couldn't have unless that was removed. But that's only because the essence of the Jew now is no longer fully tainted with the evil of Eitz Hadas. So the removal of that foreskin allows us to ascend to a level where we have Bechira, we have choice at every level. Therefore, we were given at Sinai the Ramach, which Avram numerically is Ramach, is 248, which corresponds to 248 positive commandments. The 365 commandments, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh writes in Parshas Tazria that the negative commandments that are given to us are to heal us. We wean ourselves from all these negative areas. That's the impurity of the Eitz Hadas. That's the impurity that allows us to recover from that level of impurity, and the asay is to illuminate our souls. One is to heal the soul. That's the los aseh. That allows recovery by removing ourselves in 365 areas of negative commandments. And the asay and the positive commandment introduces an illumination of the soul. That's called advancement. This was all due to what Avrohom Avinu had done, that he was worthy at the age of 99 to be given the mitzvah of Milo. The mitzvah of Milo was a confirmation of what he had become. So the Maral writes that Avrohom Avinu was not a continuation of the original creation, although physically he was the descent of Adam, but rather in terms of his level of representation, he was Tchilas Abriya. He was the beginning of a new creation. Where is it alluded to? Because we find time of creation, the Torah uses a term, Bihi Baram, and when he created them. The letters of Bihi Baram are the letters Avrohom. It's the same letters. He Baram is Avrom. That's what it is. Now, the angels had come to inform Avrom that he would have a child, which was only due to their circumcision, because until he became that new entity, he was not qualified to father Yitzchak, the future patriarch. That angel had come to heal him. Heal him from what? From the removal of that foreskin, meaning to address the area of the new level which he achieved. He achieved the level, now he's a new being. He's a new being due to that circumcision. So two of the three angels came, now you can have that son due to the circumcision, that you no longer identify with that original creation, you're a new creation, and also to heal him, that removal of that foreskin should not have a negative effect on his being, that he should be able to go forth. That two of the three angels, that was all about. Now, the world was putrefied due to Adam's eating of Deitz Hadas. That's what happened. Avram if he would have been considered part of that original creation, he wouldn't have been qualified to father the patriarch that ultimately is going to have the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who would be the forefathers of the Jewish people. So who created that new world, that new existence? Who is it attributed to? To Avram. Avram is the basis for the new creation. Until he became that new creation, he wasn't qualified, which was not tainted to the degree of Adam's world. It was a different world. Now, Yitzchak is born by a father who doesn't have that level, intensity of evil as part of his being, of his neshama. Therefore, now he's qualified to father Yitzchak. And this is the future. As a result of this, at the beginning of Lech Lecha, Hashem says to Avram, Agad L'Shmecha, Eschol L'Goy Godol, he says many things, and it concludes, Veye Brocha, and you will be a blessing. So Rashi over there cites the Midrash. What are all these various delineations? We're going to say Elokei Avram, and we're going to say Elokei Yitzchak, and we're going to say Elokei Yaakov. Maybe you consider it when we conclude the first bracha of the Shmon Esrei, we should say Mogen Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, V'yei Brocha B'chachosmin. When we conclude the bracha, first bracha of the Shmon Esrei, you will conclude Mogen Avram, only him as the patriarch. This is V'yei Brocha. The question is why? So based on what we're saying is this: Avram Avinu is the basis for the new creation. Avram Avinu is the creation which is not tainted with the evil of Deitz Hadas as the original creation was. Therefore, the only reason why there's an Lokei Yitzchak and there's Lokei Yaakov is because there's a Mogen Avram. Because Avram Avinu was able to ascend to a level due to the challenges which he met and what he introduced into existence. And he gave the world meaning. As a result of that, he is Baram, he is the beginning of new creation. As a result of that, B'chol Chosmin, we conclude Mogen Avram and not Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, not the other two patriarchs. That's the understanding over there. Okay? Now, so it's very interesting. The angel who came to inform him he's going to have the child, it was only after he was circumcised. The third day of circumcision was the most difficult day of recovery. The other angel came to heal him for that particular procedure, which was the removal of the foreskin, which allowed him to transition into a new reality, into a new creation. Okay? So let's talk now. What is the basis for the contamination of the dead? Hashem says to Adam, the day you will eat of that tree of knowledge, you will die. You'll be subject to death. Meaning, if he wouldn't have eaten of the tree of knowledge, what would have been? He would have been eternal. But because he introduced this evil into his being, therefore he has to die. Because the ultimate objective of creation is to have a relationship with Hashem. If that evil is intermingled in the being of the person, you can't have a relationship with God, because God has no relevance to evil. Therefore, the person has to die, decomposes, ultimately he'll be resurrected. That's the ultimate. That's what we call Tchias HaMesim. Avrohom, now, so what is the basis when we speak about the contamination of the dead? What is that? It's the chet of Adam Rishon, the evil which exists within man. That's why the person has to die. And that's why any other contamination, one goes to the mikveh, you follow the protocols, after so many days, you're reinstated to a level of purity. If a person comes in contact with the dead, you could go to the mikveh from now forever. You will not be relieved of that level of contamination. You need the procedure of the Parah Aduma. The Parah Aduma, you follow that procedure, although it's something which is not understandable, that even Shlomo says it's beyond his grasp. Even he couldn't fathom the inner workings of Parah Aduma, but that's the only way one can be relieved of the contamination of the dead. The question is why. Every other contamination, one can be relieved when one goes to the mikveh. You immerse yourself in that body of water which meets the criteria of what a mikveh is, what a mayon is, what a natural wellspring is. But the contamination of dead, it's only the Parah Aduma. So if you remember, Rashi in Parshas Chukas cites Rav Moshe Darshan, and he explains it. He says, what is it analogous to? You have a maidservant in the palace, and a child soils the palace. So the king says to the maidservant, the mother, clean up after your child. So the egel is the child. The egel is the offspring of the cow. So the egel, the Gemara tells us that if not for the chet egel, we'd be eternal. Because when we sat at Kabul Store, we were reinstated to the pre-sin of Adam. It was only as a result of chet egel, we reverted back to post-Adam. So what is the cause of Tumas Mes, of the contamination of the dead? Because the evil of the Eitz Hadas, which causes death, was reactivated. So who caused that? The egel. The Porah, the cow, addresses that. That's the reason why this can't be addressed. You cannot be relieved unless you undergo the procedure of the Parah Aduma. The mother comes and cleans up after the child. The paltin, the palace, is existence. The soiling of the palace is the chet of Adam Rishon. That's the chet. Let the mother come and clean up after its child. But it has to be a parah. I'm not speaking about it. It has to be red, unblemished. But why the parah? So we're saying now, in Parshas Pinchas, it says we have 3 species of animals that are brought as communal offerings. Porim, Ayil, and Kvosim. So Rashi says, Porim correspond to Avrohom Avinu. And where does it say por by Avrohom Avinu? By Elaboka Rotz Avrohom. He ran to the cattle to provide the hospitality for the Malachim, for the angels. That he believed that they were humans, but they were angels in human form. Said Elaboka Rotz Avrohom, what is that addressing? That's addressing 2 things. The angel's coming to tell him he's going to have a son, and also to heal him from the circumcision. That's the porim. So what does the par represent? The par represents Avrohom, and what did Avrohom do to humanity? What did he do to existence? He weaned the world of that evil, and due to that, he transitioned into a new reality, it's a new creation. So because the par represents Avrohom Avinu, who's the basis for a new creation, which doesn't have that evil as Adam's creation had, and therefore Avrohom is Ramach, is 248 and 365. That's the reason why it's only the par, because the par represents the transition to a new reality of existence, which it doesn't have that reality of that evil any longer. This is what I said this past Shabbos. Therefore, it's the para rather than any other species which could be relieved from the contamination of the dead.